So we will begin this morning with, or this afternoon. Well, good. I should first, of course, wish you all good afternoon or good day, good evening, whichever it happens to be, maybe even good night. We will begin as usual with thinking about our motivation, the motivation of bodhicitta, if possible. And so please now let us recite the prayers of going for refuge and rousing bodhicitta with a good motivation, thinking about the meaning of the words as you recite them. O sangye chedan sogi chonam la chancho bardo dane chapsum je dage chenyen gibe sanam ye Dola penjer sanje do bar sho sangye chedan sogi chonam la chancho bardo dane chapsum che dagi chenyengi pe sunam ye Dola penjer sanje drobar sho sangye chedang Tsogi chonam la chancho bardo dane chapsum je Dagi chenyen gi pe sunam gi rola Penjer sanje robar sho Until enlightenment I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and the sublime Sangha. By the merit of my listening to the Dharma, may I reach Buddhahood to benefit beings. Semjen tamje dewa tan dewe judan dembro juje donga dan donga ji judan dalwa juje donga mebe dewa tamba tan mindrawa juje Yerin shatan nidan dalwe tanyon chambola nebra juje. May all sentient beings be happy and have the causes of happinesses. May they be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be parted from the highest equanimity, free from the highest joy, free of suffering. May they dwell in the great equanimity, free of attachment or hatred for those near or far. And now please think to yourselves that we must do something that's going to be of benefit. A benefit to ourselves, a benefit to all other sentient beings. And between the different types of benefit, it's better to bring a longer lasting benefit. Short-term help is good, but it is short-term, it is temporary. And so we need to do what we can to benefit ourselves and others in the long term. And ultimately, the only way to really benefit ourselves and others for the long term is enlightenment, because any other state is going to be good for a while, and it might seem like a long while, but eventually it'll end because it's temporary. And so we need to try to achieve the ultimate result now in this lifetime and do whatever we can to achieve that ultimate result. And in order to do this, we have to meditate. If we're going to meditate, we have to have an understanding of what we're meditating on. And so that's why we study. And so please listen with this motivation today, this motivation of bodhicitta. The Dharma that we are listening to is the treasury of Abhidharma by the great Bodhisattva, the great master Vasubandhu. as it is explained by the ninth Karmapa, Wangzhe Dorje, in his commentary Youthful Play. Now, the commentary Youthful Play, as well as the Treasury of Abhidharma, there are 8 chapters, and we are discussing the 6th, the chapter on the paths and the individuals. This chapter on the paths and individuals has a section on, first of all, the paths. Then the second is an explanation of the individuals, and a third is an explanation of specific explanations of the paths. So we are on the section about the explanations of the individuals. And we've been discussing, we went through a little bit of the text, and we had kind of a general presentation. I gave a kind of general presentation of it the other day. So in general, with the explanations of individuals, we have the 3 topics. We have the explaining the 4 pairs of individuals, classifying them into 7 enumerations, and combining them into 6 substances. So we are in the first of these, explaining the 4 pairs of individuals, and this is 3 topics: explaining stream enters, explaining those previously detached, and explaining successive results. And that third one is the point where we've got to today. And in looking at this today, in the section that we're going through today, is all about the different types of results that you get, the stages. And when we talk about results, we're talking about the stages along the path. How do you know where you are and what you're doing? And these are taught in terms of the Great Exposition tradition, and similarly also the Foundation Vehicle tradition in general. So there's some overlap, or a lot of commonality, with the paths as taught in the Theravada school, although there may be some distinctions. There probably are some little distinctions because each school has its own specific. But it's really, these are really talking about the stages you go through. When you develop one sort of realization, well, what do we call you then? What does that tell us about you when you are at that stage? And then what is it that you need to do to move on to the next stage? So these explanations are really tailored to the people who are actually practicing the path of the foundation vehicle, whose ultimate aim is to achieve the state of arhatship, right? So the problem is that this is a little bit different than what we're actually practicing in the Tibetan tradition. And so this is, I think, sometimes something that gives us a little bit of an issue. And so I think here we need to be careful about, because I think there's always a thought, where do I fit in here? Among all these 5 paths, which path am I on? Which level of result am I on? Have I become a stream enterer yet? Where am I? What am I on the path? And in general, on the one hand, this is a natural sort of questioning that we do. But we also have to remember that the path that we're on is a little bit different than the path that is being described here. So because the path that we are actually practicing is different than what is described here, rather than going into a lot of detail on the specifics of these stages, I'm going to go through the text in a fairly simple way. It's actually not that difficult. There are not too many difficult points that are described at length in the commentaries. This is a fairly straightforward section. We're going to go through it fairly quickly. This, again, will not be on the final exam. So you don't have to worry about that. I haven't decided what to do about the final exams. I hate taking exams, and I think I'm probably even less fond of grading them. So you don't have to worry too much about a final exam, especially if you're watching on YouTube and I don't even know who you are. But so we're going to go through it quickly. Now, is this completely useless knowledge then? It's not. And there are a couple of ways. First of all, if you're going to do intensive study, and in particular, if you want to study the texts on Prajnaparamita and the ornament of clear realization, this next passage actually gives you really important information for a section that is near the beginning of the ornament of liberation, or the ornament of realization by Maitreya. If you want to study that text, then at the beginning there's a section on what they call the 20 sanghas, or the 20 types of sangha. And this goes through exactly the same, well, It's based on the same material that we're talking about here, but it's more complicated. So here we get a slightly simpler version. And if you're going to study the ornament of clear realization, then actually, usually people study the ornament of clear realization first and this later. But when I studied the ornament of clear realization, I studied that earlier. And then we went to study the Abhidharma. And I thought, oh, this is so much clearer now that I understand it in the Abhidharma. So if you're going to study the ornament of clear realization, looking through this section is helpful. And then also, if you're going to be doing a lot of reading of Buddhist texts, you want to know what you're reading about, because these terms do come up from time to time. So you want to be able to know it's being talked about. So that's just in sort of a general educational level if you're doing studies. But in other words, in other levels, it's mainly thinking about, well, how do you go through the process of remembering the general stages? Just kind of the process of going through, of gradually eliminating more and more defilements, more and more discards, and getting closer and closer to your result. That's the basic point that we have to do it. But this gets kind of confusing at first because there are so many different states. We're all starting at different places and we have one place we're going to, but we're starting at different places. And so there are different ways you get there. So it starts sounding like a whole lot, especially when you start talking about 16 different thousand types of people, beings, and so forth. As it talks about at one point here. But you don't have to worry about that. That one's actually relatively simple if you just remember how to multiply. But in terms of, and now I had a question that came in over email last night, and rather than going through the question in specific, I think the way to look at it is just to kind of think about where we are, how we are in our practice. At the beginning of our practice, when we're first starting out, we're beginning to do a little bit of study. We're beginning to do some of our initial meditations, whether it be starting out doing shamatha meditation or doing the four preliminary practices, the common or the special preliminaries or so forth. There's a point at the beginning where we start to be able to recognize what's going on in our mind, the afflictions when they're arising, and how, for example, if we get upset and angry easily, we can recognize how that happens. This is kind of analogous to the points on the path of accumulation, where you are going through the four foundations of mindfulness. You're starting the four foundations. This is the beginning of the four foundations of mindfulness. It's not actually really the four foundations of mindfulness. But when you're getting some idea of being able to look at where you are, this is kind of like the beginning of the path. And this is excellent because you have to start someplace. This is actually an excellent stage to be at and is very good news. There's a ways to go, but that's not a problem. Then we go through and you meditate and you kind of work with that and you gather the accumulation of merit, such as through the mandala practice. And at this stage, I mean, of course, mandala practice can be very profound, but it can also, on its basic level, it is just gathering the accumulation of merit and wisdom, which is the path of accumulation. Then we get to the path of joining, and you go through the four stages of the path of joining, where it's just getting really stronger and stronger. So the main point about the path of joining is that's a point where you've got stable meditation. Stable but conceptual. So you're able to meditate, basically. Here they talk about doing it in terms of the dhyana meditations. In the Mahamudra tradition, we talk about it as doing the process of the three yogas of one-pointedness, being able to rest with your mind on a single focus and be able to just rest the mind and so forth. So that'd be analogous. Of course, the path is different because it's a different tradition, but it's kind of analogous. Then you come to the point where you go through the path of seeing. That's the 16, we get the realization of the truth. And so in the great exposition, in the foundation vehicle, that's talked about as being the 16 moments of clear realization, where you see the four truths in order, as we have been through in previous days, and you go through them. And so that happens in a very quick succession. 16 moments, but not a long time. I mean, each moment is maybe, I don't know. It's not going to take you very long to go through those, because 16 moments are generally not very long. Enough time to see, recognize, see more, recognize more, and so forth, 16 times. And then you're on the path of meditation, where you've seen the truth, but you've got all those afflictions that are not yet, that are more deeply ingrained. And those are the ones that you have to actually meditate. Seeing is not enough to discard them. You also have to cultivate the truths, cultivate your wisdom. That's going through the path of meditation. And then when you're free of all the defilements or of all the obscurations, you achieve the final result. So that's where we are. So that's the path that we go through in general for all the traditions. And so here we are in the Great Exposition tradition. We're talking about the paths of the paths of the foundation vehicle. And right now we've got to the point where we're talking about the 4 types of results. So the first result you get is when you are on the path of clear realization. Now, yesterday we spoke about, or the other day we spoke about how you go through. You can be on different levels depending on what you have previously discarded and so forth. But today we're going to talk about it in terms of successive results. There's another translation that translates it as serial abandoners. When I hear serial abandoners, this makes me feel about someone who goes through one relation and abandons it after another, abandoning one partner after the other. That's what it makes me think of, because usually we think of serial murderers or so a serial abandoner. So here we're talking about people who are going through the results one after another, successive results. Okay, so explaining successive results, here we have the, I might as well show the text. So explaining the successive results, this is 4 topics because we have 4 different types of results. We've got entering and abiding in stream enterer. We've got entering and abiding in once returner, entering and abiding in non-returner, and entering and abiding in arhat. So there are these 4 different results: stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and arhat. And we've got entering and abiding in result for all 4 of them. So we're going to start. We went over this in a general way the other day. So today we're talking about entering and abiding in stream enterer. So this is 2 topics: entering and abiding. So entering has already been taught above. We've already been through that. This is discussed in the discussion of the 16 moments of clear realization. When you're on the first 15 moments, you're still working. You're not there yet. So you are entering stream enter. And then when you get to the state, the 16th moment, then you are abiding. So abiding has 2 parts: the general teaching and the individual explanations. So the general teaching has 2 points. So the first is teaching that the mere abider in result is not an enterer. What does this mean? So what it says is, to gain a result is not to gain the path of higher progress. Thus, those dwelling in result, not striving to improve it, are not enterers. So what this is talking about is that when we get into the path of seeing, we've gone through the points, and you get to the 16th moment. You're at that point, if you are just on that 16th moment, or on the path of meditation following that 16th moment, and you're not actively trying to get to the next level, then you are abiding in the result. If you are actually trying to abandon the discards, then you are entering the next result, right? So the difference between abiding in the stream enter and then entering the next result, once returner, is that you're trying or not trying. If you're not trying, you're abiding. If you are trying, you are entering the once returner. So here the text reads, the commentary reads, when stream enterers have abandoned the 5th discard and are on the 16th cognition, why are they not entering the result of one returner? So if you remember from the other day, when we are entering the path of seeing, we can, let's go and take a look at that slide again. When you're in the path of stream enter, this shouldn't be entering stream enter, this should be stream enter, abiding in stream enter. When you are in this level of stream enter, you either haven't abandoned any of the discards of meditation, or you can have abandoned up to 5 of the 9 of the level of desire. Remember that there are 9 sets of discards for each level. So in desire, if you are abiding in stream enterer, then you could have abandoned any of these 5, up to 5. Now, this is also the same as if you are a once returner, if you are entering once returner. So the only difference is if you're trying to get further ahead, then you are entering once returner. So as it continues in the commentary, so here on this line it says, at that time they have gained a mere result, a stream enter, but that is not to gain the path of higher progress. So just having the result of stream enter doesn't mean that you're necessarily mean that you're entering once returner. Thus, those stream enters who are dwelling in result and not striving to attain the second result that improves it. So for example, they get to that 16th moment, and for some reason, I don't know, the Buddha's giving a teaching. Some teacher's giving a teaching. They have to build a hut. They have to do something. So they're not going to be doing their meditation to move on to the next level. They have to do something else. So they do that other thing. And then when they sit down and start meditating to move to the higher level, then they become entering then they are entering the next result. So those who are not making efforts to attain a result are not enterers in that result. Okay, so this is for going from stream enter to once returner, and it's similar for other levels. So by this logic, one can also know that the reason why someone who has abandoned the 8th discard of desire and abides on the 16th moment is not called entering the result of non-returner. So you've been through the path of seeing, you're on the path of meditation, you've eliminated 8 of the 9 discards of meditation for the level of desire. You're not called entering a non-returner yet, because you're just sitting there waiting. Once you try, then you're entering the result. And the reason why someone who's detached from nothingness and abides in the 16th moment is not entering the result of arhat. So if you have eliminated all of the discards of all the levels except for that of the peak of existence, the level of neither perception nor non-perception, the highest level of formless, then at that point, you're still dwelling in the result of a non-returner instead of entering the result of arhat. Basically means if you're working, you are entering. If you're not working, you aren't. So the classifications of the path of enter and the discards of meditation. Each level has 9 kinds of faults and likewise 9 qualities, because the lesser and so forth of lesser, middle, and great are separate. So this is exactly what we spoke about the other day. The 9 sets of antidotes. Here you've got the 9 antidotes, the lesser, middling, greater, lesser, and so forth, and the 9 discards of meditation. You've got the different levels. This is what we presented the other day. So this is the verse that is teaching this same text. The antidotes go from smaller to greater. The discards of meditation go from greater to smaller, because the greater discards of meditation, they're bigger, but they're easier to get out. The smaller ones are subtler and more deeply ingrained. So they need a bigger and stronger antidote. So to return to the text, each level, so the 9 sets of afflictions of desire have been taught, and likewise, each level from the first jhana to the peak existence also has 9 kinds of faults each. So there are 9 sets of these discards of meditation for each level. The 1 of desire, the 4 of the form, and the 4 of the formless. So 9 sets of 9 are 81. Likewise, in the same way as the faults, each of the levels also has 9 sets of qualities. So qualities here means the antidotes, the path of no obstacles. In other words, wisdom, the wisdom that newly arises. So when you're talking about the path of no obstacles, you're talking about kind of a new level of wisdom. So the wisdom kind of jumps up in stages. It's kind of like, what is it? Quantum leaps. It's not like a gradual thing. You've got to leap, and you got to leap, and you got to leap, and a leap. And I think as you go through your practice, you might find sometimes it feels like you're making kind of jumps. Whether we're actually on the path or not is a different matter. Even on the path of what do we say? Even on, excuse me, I'm not screen sharing, am I? So even on the path of accumulation and joining, I think you probably still have this feeling like you're going up a level. You're going up a level. Things are getting better. So this is because so you have the 9 sets of qualities, the antidotes, the path of no obstacles, and also the paths of liberation. The paths of liberation aren't antidotes because the discards have already gone. It's not an antidote because there's nothing for it to be an antidote to anymore. But it's kind of the same level of wisdom, the same level of realization. This is because the lesser and so forth, the middle and greater of lesser. So this means you've got the lesser, middle, and greater of lesser, then the lesser, middle, and greater of middle, and the lesser, middle, and greater of greater are all separate. So that's the antidotes. And then the lesser of the lesser path discards the greater of the greater afflictions, and the greater of the greater path discards the lesser of the lesser afflictions. So to go back to our diagram here, we've got the 3 lesser, and with the top we have the antidotes, the lesser, lesser, the middling lesser, and the greater lesser. And they discard the greater, greater, middling greater, and the lesser greater. Then you have the 3 middling of each. The lesser middling discards the greater middling antidote. Discard. The middling antidote discards the middling discards. The greater middling antidote discards the lesser middling discards, and so forth. Right? Down to the greater of greater antidotes, discarding the lesser of lesser discards. So this is because at the very beginning, the greater path is impossible. It's too much for you at this point. And by the time you get to the greater path, when the greater path arises, the greater afflictions are impossible. Why? Because you already have the successive levels of wisdom that lead up to the greater path. You have the different levels of antidotes have already arisen, and each of them is eliminating a different set of afflictions. So by the time you have the great affliction, the only ones you have left are the really subtle and difficult to abandon afflictions. Okay. So now we have the individual explanations of the paths. And so here we have the 2 topics. We have the 7-timer and the from family to family. So these are the individual explanations of the, excuse me. These are the different explanations of the, excuse me for a moment. Okay. These are different explanations of the types of stream enterers. We're still talking about stream enterers here. So we have the first is the 7-timer. 7-timer means at most 7 births. So the 7-timer has 2 points. First is ascertaining the 7-timer, recognizing what it is. So those dwelling in result without discarding any through meditation at most 7 times. So if you are dwelling in the result of stream enterer, you've gone through all 16 moments of the path of the 16 moments of clear realization. You're dwelling in the result, but you haven't eliminated any of the discards of meditation. At most 7 times, you're not coming back to desire any more than 7 times. So those who dwell in a result without discarding any of the desire realm's afflictions, which are discarded through meditation, if they reach the uppermost limit, even in maximum, they will be reborn at most 7 more lifetimes. They are a 7-timer. 7 more lifetimes in desire. Since not all stream enterers are 7-timers, this is the lowest of all results. This is the one that hasn't abandoned any of the discards of meditation, right? Once you've abandoned some of the discards of meditation, then you become called by a different name. It's a different level of result. So, now, all of these stream enterers, though, are called stream enterers, and the reason is because stream enterers are so called because they have entered the stream of the path to nirvana. They're definitely in the stream. They will be carried by the stream to nirvana. Now, some proponents of the Great Exposition say that 7 more lifetimes means 7 more births in each of the prior state of gods. That means as gods, and in the states of humans, plus their between states for 28. So you're born as a human, and then you die, and then you're in the bardo, then you're born as a god, and when you're in the god realm, this is called a prior state because it's prior to your death in the god realm. That's why it's prior to death. And then you go through the bardo, so that's 4 states, and then that's go through 7 times. So this is 28 times. But it's it's 7 sets of 4. They're similar in having sets of 7, so it is called 7 times. It is like calling a plant 7-leaved. A seven-leaved plant, there's actually a plant that's common in central India. It's called a seven-leaf plant. It doesn't have just 7 leaves on one tree. It's that each leaf has 7 lobes. And each lobe is separate. So it looks like you've got a single stem with 7 lobes on it. So that's why it's called a seven-leaved. Others say that it's 7 rebirths combining the rebirths as gods and humans. So you can have a birth as a human, a birth as a god, another birth as a god, a birth as a human, 7 total. This is the Noble Master's explanation. Excuse me, this is one explanation, but the Noble Master, that is Vasubandhu, says it is consistent with the former. In other words, he's saying that you're born as a human at most 7 more times. That's what he's saying. Otherwise, you're going to be born as a god. You wouldn't be a desire realm god because you haven't yet eliminated the discards of meditation or the attachment to the desire realm. So, well, doesn't this, if it's consistent with the former, doesn't this contradict the Sutra of Many Realms, which states there is no occasion and no opportunity for an individual with excellent view to produce an eighth existence? There is no place for that. Now, it's not contradictory of that. And the reason is that this is about not producing in one class of beings in desire, as humans in desire. Otherwise, it would be impossible to die and be reborn in all places, because there is a type of non-returner who dies in the desire realm, then is born in the first form realm, and then is born in, then dies there and is reborn in the second form realm, dies there, is reborn in the third form realm, et cetera, all the way up to the all the way up to the ninth, all the way up to the peak of existence. And even within form realm, they go through the different levels of the, there are the 17 abodes of the form realm. They go through 16 of them. They don't go through the level of great Brahma, but they go through 16 different levels in the form realm, and then 4 levels in the formless realm. That's 20 lifetimes, and some of those lifetimes are really long. That's more than 7, right? You wouldn't have teachings on you wouldn't have teachings on that if it were necessarily 7 lifetimes total. So this is 7 lifetimes as a human. So here we have so that's the section on the 7 timers. It means 7 more rebirths as a human in the desire realm. So 7 timer is the longest, but it is possible to make nirvana manifest before the 7th birth. Just because you are a 7 timer at the moment, that's your outside limit. You could finish in this lifetime, or you could finish in 3 lifetimes. It's up to you. It's not like saying you're definitely going to be one way or the other. Additionally, ordinary individuals on the paths of accumulation and enjoying, whose beings have been ripened, are also 7 timers. So if you are a being on the path of accumulation or joining, an ordinary being who has not yet really seen the truth, then you also, if your beings have been ripened, so if they have that special quality, and it's not certain, you've had a certain amount of practice, your being is ready, you've had the karmic conditions that it's ready, then you're also a 7 timer. So that's the first type. And then the second type of stream enter is those who go from family to family. Or you could change it, say it from class to class. It's a distinction. Those freed from 3 or 4 with 2 or 3 more lives from family to family. So those stream enters who have the 3 causes, so they have 3 qualities that you have to have. You would have to have discarded from 3 or 4 of the afflictions. So you've got the 9 level of afflictions of desire. You would have had to have gone through at least 3 of those, or from 4 of them, sets of discards of meditation. In terms of faculties, the attainment of the antidote and the undefiled faculties, and in terms of birth with 2 or 3 more lifetimes remaining. So in terms of the faculties, you've got to have the sharper faculties and the attainment of the antidote. These are the undefiled faculties. The undefiled faculties are all-knowing and knowing all-knowing and possessing all-knowing that we discussed in the 2nd chapter. And then in terms of births, they have 2 or 3 more lifetimes remaining, are stream enterers who are born from family to family or from kind to kind. So this means that, there are a couple types. So there is one type who's your stream enter. You aren't ready to go to the form realm, but in your next lifetime, you're going to be reborn human. You might be reborn human 2 or 3 more times before you move on to the next realm. Or you might be a stream enterer who is reborn in the God realm, the desire realm gods. And then you're reborn as a desire realm god 2 or 3 times before going on to the next level. So that's what we mean. You're going from sometimes kind of like staying the same you're staying from one family into another family, or another type of sentient being. But it's not definite that you're going to necessarily do that. It's possible also, according to the auto commenter, that you might end up going in some other direction. So this is these are not saying you're definitely going to do this. This is the roadmap thou shalt follow. It is actually saying this is probably what's going to happen unless something different happens. So that's the stream enter. So now we've come to the section on entering and abiding in the result of once returner. And so here we have 2 topics, entering and abiding. So entering once returner, if they have conquered up to 5, they're also entering the second. So if you have conquered up to 5 of the discards of meditation, so they're like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, you've got up to 5 antidotes. You have at least 4 sets of discards to go. You are entering once returner. You are not yet a once returner, but you are entering it. So if the stream enters abiding in the distinctive result, have conquered up to 5 sets of discards of meditation, the desire, they are also entering the second result. So the difference is, are they just abiding or are they entering? Again, as I said before, are they trying? If you're trying, then you're striving. Then abiding in result means, has 2 points here. There's mere abiding in result, and when the 6th set is extinguished, at that time they are a once returner. So when the 6th set of desire realms discards is gone, then at that point you are abiding in result. So this is what it looks like in our chart. You've got 6 sets gone. Then you're abiding in the result of once returner. So when the 6 sets of desires, discards of meditation is extinguished, at that time they have attained the second results of once returner. It is possible that they will be reborn once more in desire, but twice or more is impossible. So if if you're on this level, you can achieve the state of non-returner or arhat in that lifetime. Or if you don't in this lifetime, you certainly will in your next lifetime, but you will not be reborn in the desire realm more than just one more time. Then there's distinctive abiding in the result, which is just like a little bit better. When they have extinguished 7 or 8 classes of faults, 1 life, 1 obstacle. So the distinction in terms of abandonment, what distinguishes this in terms of the abandonment is that they who are abiding in the result of once returner, who have extinguished the 7th or 8th class of the faults of the desire that are discarded by meditation, and have attained the undefiled path that is its antidote. So this is, again, if we go back to here we have the abiding in the result of once returner, and then when you discard the 6th, then you've got this distinctive result of 1 lifetime, 1 obstacle. It's called 1 lifetime, 1 obstacle because you've got 1 more lifetime in desire. You've got basically 1 more set of obstacles to go. And so, are we there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, it should be 1 more. There. That's 1 lifetime and 1 obstacle. This is it when you've got 7. So you've got 1 or 2 sets of discards left. You've definitely got 1 more lifetime. You might have gone through the 8th set of discards. So the distinction in terms of birth is that they have 1 intervening lifetime before attaining nirvana. So 1 more lifetime before attaining nirvana. This is what Angsha Dorje says, but it could be 1 intervening lifetime before achieving non-returner. Alternatively, they have only 1 aspect of affliction preventing them from attaining the result of non-returner. For that reason, they are called 1 lifetime, 1 obstacles. So the reason why this is explained separately from the other results is to rebut the doubt that the three lesser afflictions together might make one take rebirth in desire. So some people might think that if you have the three lesser types of afflictions of desire, the sixth, the seventh, eighth, and ninth altogether, then you have to take rebirth in desire. But if you've only got one or two left, maybe you can still get out of the desire realm. That is not the case. Even one of those sets of afflictions will cause you to take rebirth in desire realm. The reason that one set of afflictions cannot prevent the attainment of the result of once returner in this lifetime, but, but can prevent the attainment of non-returner. So having one set of meditation discards, so if we go back here, we see that there's one set of discards left, right? That doesn't stop you from becoming a once returner. You can still be a once returner and only have one more lifetime in desire. But it does keep you from becoming a non-returner. Why is that? Because you still have attachment to the desire realm. You have subtle attachment to the desire realm, but it is still attachment. And it has to be eliminated before you can progress to the seventh level. For example, if you are playing a video game, you have to get through all the obstacles in the first, I don't play video games, so you have to go through all the obstacles in the first level before you can get to the second. It's the same here. So back to our text. Okay. But for the latter, so that one obstacle cannot prevent you from becoming a once returner, but it can prevent the attainment of non-returner. And that is because for it to become a once returner, you do not need to transcend the desire realm, but for the latter, non-returner, one does. So now we've come to the level of non-returner. This has two topics: entering and abiding result. So when you are a one lifetime, one obstacle, once returner who have discarded the seventh and eighth sets, in other words, when you only have one set left, then you're entering the result of non-returner, right? So then we have the next topics, abiding and result. This has two topics, the overview and individual explanation. So the overview is that when the ninth has perished, then you are a non-returner. So that means when you don't have any more obstacles left to eliminate on the desire realm, then you're a non-returner. You're called a non-returner because you're never returning to the, because once you have extinguished that ninth set, then you are never returning to the desire realm. So when the ninth is perished, non-returner. Those who abide in the result of non-returner, when the ninth set of discards of meditation has perished, are non-returners. So in other words, you eliminate that ninth, and then you become, then you are dwelling or abiding in the result of non-returner. And the reason is because they will not return to the desire realm even once. The essence of this result is a combination of the composite ninth liberation, that is the freedom from that ninth, and the non-composite extinction of the discards. The ninth liberation, that's the wisdom, and the non-composite extinction is the cessation. Those two together make the net nature of this path. The continuum that possesses these two is an individual who abides in the result. So this is kind of like the technical definition. You have to have that wisdom that is the liberation from the ninth discard, and you also have to have the cessation of the ninth discard. And if you're the being who has that, then you are abiding in the result. But when we look at it with the non-returners, there are tons of different types of non-returners because there's so many, because we've got, what do we have? We've got, you're free from the desire realm. Well, then there are 4 levels of form. There are 4 levels of formless. Within the 4 levels of form, there are 17 different abodes. So who's going where? No one's, non-returners don't go to the level of Brahma's abodes, or great Brahma, so you don't need to worry about that. So that means there are 16 different places in the form realm that you could go. There are the 4 levels of formless you could go. And because when you talk about all these different things, well, then you've got the non-returners who go to form, to the first form, those who go to the highest levels of form, the pure abodes, or those who go to the formless, and it gets to be a lot of different topics. How long are they going to spend in any one? So for that reason, there are lots of individual explanations of non-returners. So for the individual explanations, there are 5 topics. the explanations of those bound for form. That means the explanation about all the different types of non-returners who are going to be reborn in the form realm. There are the explanation of those bound for formless, who are going to take rebirth in the formless realm. The explanation of visible peace, which means that they've achieved non-returner in this lifetime, but they're also going to achieve the state of arhat before they pass away. And then explaining the many classifications of non-returners and the explanation of those made manifest by body. So those are the 5 topics. So first we're going to begin with the explanation of those bound for form. So this is 2 topics, the general classifications and the particular classifications of those bound for hire. So I'm going to see if I can resize things, get it all together. Oh, my screen does not want to jump into the way I have. No, I have to make it bigger. Maybe that'll work. Okay, so the general classifications is they pass into nirvana in between on birth, with effort, without effort, or they're bound for hire. So you've got people, they're going to be reborn in the one of 16 different abodes of the form realm. Or they're going to die in desire. When they die in desire, they could pass into nirvana in the between state, the bardo, that is before they take rebirth. They could be reborn as soon as they take birth, on birth. They could be reborn in the form realm and have to work at it in order to achieve liberation. Or they could be reborn in the form realm. And once they're born there, they don't really try. And it takes a little while, but eventually they just naturally develop the wisdom and achieve nirvana, or they're bound for hire. That means that maybe they're born in like the first abode of the lowest abode of the form realm, and then have to go to the higher realms. So of the many different non-returners, that is, the non-returners bound for form, so we've got 2 types, those who are going to form realm, those who are going to formless realm. So we're talking about those who are bound for form. In other words, those who have eliminated the afflictions that bind them to the desire realm, but not those that attach them to the form realm. So there are 5 types of these. There are 5-fold. There are those who pass into beyond sorrow, that is, into nirvana without remainder in the between state. Nirvana without remainder means first that you don't have a body anymore. You leave your body behind and you just go into the cessation. So they do that in the between or bardo state. There are those who pass into nirvana on birth, right after being born. There are those who are born with, who pass into nirvana with effort. They have to work a little bit. Those who pass into nirvana without effort, they wait a while, but it just naturally happens. Or there are those who are bound for the higher. So the first of these dies here, makes the path manifest in the between state for any of the 16 abodes other than great Brahma, and attains the result. So, and attains nirvana. So that means they're dying here. They achieve the form meditation, the dhyanas in this lifetime. They're they've seen the truth. They're a non-returner, and they're kind of a strong meditation. So they die here, and during the bardo, before they actually take rebirth in form, they achieve nirvana. That's what it's saying. So they attain the state of arhat. They achieve nirvana by their dharma nature. In other words, by their own actual nature. They do not remain long in the between state. And as they do not have the afflictions of birth, they immediately enter the state without remainder. They don't have a physical body, and so they just naturally enter the state of nirvana without remainder. So that's the first type, those who pass into the nirvana in the bardo. The second passes into nirvana with remainder not long after birth and form because of the effort and because of the path appearing naturally. So they are born, they immediately start meditating, and they pass into nirvana. But they pass into nirvana with remainder, which means that they still have the body in their form. They're not strong enough to leave the body behind, but they work, and they work at it, and the path appears naturally, and so they achieve nirvana quickly. And the third type, these are the people who, those who pass into nirvana with effort. The third makes efforts, but the path does not appear naturally. So they pass into nirvana with effort a somewhat long time after taking birth. So they work at it, and it takes them a while to develop the path to achieve nirvana. But they do eventually. They have to work at it, though. And then the fourth type, these are who attain nirvana without effort. They attain nirvana with it after effort, but not immediately after birth. So this is the difference between the fourth and the second. The second is like not long after birth. And the fourth attains nirvana sometime after birth. So the lifetimes in the form realm are incredibly long. So the second is born, it passes into nirvana, and maybe a day or two later, they pass into nirvana quickly. The fourth attains nirvana, and then maybe it's a few years, which of course they're form realm years, so they're like millions of human years, but a few years, and that the path appears naturally, and they pass into completely nirvana without great efforts. They don't have to work at it. Maybe that's why it takes them a long time to do it. The fifth does not make efforts, and the path does not appear naturally. They do not attain arhat in the lower abodes, but graduate to high realms and to pass into nirvana in any one of them. So this is one, they're born into like the level of Brahma's abode, the first of the three abodes of the first jhana. They're born there. They're in the form realm. They're non-returners. They aren't really trying. And the path, that means the path of achieving arhat, doesn't happen naturally. So they don't achieve it in the lower realms, but they kind of go to higher and higher realms and to pass into nirvana in any one. So they might be reborn in like one of the abodes, the second dhyana or the third dhyana, or maybe in the formless, and then they achieve nirvana there. There are many different permutations of that. So of these five, the first, that is those who pass into nirvana in the bardo, has discarded the fetters of birth and so attains nirvana solely without remainder. In other words, they have abandoned enough fetters, enough of the binds that bind them to samsara, that they can achieve, that they haven't achieved arhatship yet, but they don't have any fetters of birth, so they're going to achieve it in the bardo. Those who attain nirvana immediately after birth are not asserted to attain it without remainder. In other words, they still have a body, a form realm body, but a body, because they have those who have not attained the highest end of dhyana, which means the fourth dhyana, on the support of a human body on the three continents, do not have the power to cast off life. In other words, you can't just decide your life is over and die without, slitting your throat, to just decide this is enough. If you have, unless you have achieved the level of the fourth jhana. So they haven't achieved that level. And the karma that makes them remain in the previous state, that is in the body, the previous state. If you remember, we've got the four types of states from the third chapter. You've got the birth state, the death state, the between state, and the previous state. And the previous state means like the lifetime that you're in, previous to death. So that karma that makes you stay there is also very strong. So because they have strong karma, they're stuck in that form realm body for the rest of their form realm lifetime, even though they've achieved nirvana. And then when that lifetime is over, then they pass into nirvana without remainder, which means that they no longer have a physical body. They're just dwelling in cessation. So then there's the order that they're presented, because we've got five. We're passing to nirvana on birth, into bardo, on birth, with effort, without effort, and then bound for higher. We've got so many, this five orders. So why is it that with effort is before without effort? You'd think that without effort is kind of like better than with effort, because you don't have to work at it, right? It seems better, right? So why is it described afterwards? So as for the order there to present it, the sutras explain nirvana without effort before nirvana with effort. So in the sutras, the order given is nirvana in the bardo, nirvana upon birth, nirvana without effort, not nirvana with effort, and then bound for higher. And the master, that is Vasubandhu, also says this is best, because that kind of shows the capacities, the greater capacity of the different individuals. But the Great Exposition, however, says that as their path arises naturally, if they are mentioned first, there would be no distinction between them and those who pass into nirvana immediately upon birth. So that's what, and so they list it later. So they give it as the difference, as nirvana in the bardo, nirvana on birth, nirvana with effort and without effort, and then bound for hire. So the order of the third and fourth are reversed in the two traditions. So that's basically the reason for it there. But then we have the classifications of those bound for hire. And if you ever study the ornament of clear realization and you want to do some debate, there is a lot of topic for debate in here. But we will not go into it in that detail. The basics are kind of simple. When you start looking at the specifics, it gets harder. So first of all, there are 2 points here. The first is those who will go to below none. There are two types of people. There are those who are going to go to the go all the way to the level of below none, which is the highest of the pure realms, or the pure abodes of the form realm, or those who are going to go to the peak of existence, which is the highest level of the formless realm. So, if they alternate the jhanas, they are bound for below none. They leap, half leap, or die in all the realms. So if they practice a meditation called alternating the jhanas, which means that they're going back very quickly between defiled jhana to an undefiled jhana and back to a defiled jhana. If they do that alternating meditation, this is kind of like really, what do you say? It's virtuoso meditation. It's like, if you can do this, you're a real virtuoso meditator. If you can do it once, that's pretty good. That's alternating, that's good. If you can do it twice, that's even better, and so forth, up to 5 times. If you can do it up to 5 times, then that's like, like a real virtuoso, a really master meditator. So that's all. If you can do that, then you are bound for below none. You will be reborn in the level of below none. And so the way you get there is either you can leap or half leap, which means you take you go in 2 jumps, or you die in all the realms. That means you go in one of each abode, one after the other. So there are 2 types of those bound for the higher. When you talked about the nirvana, those non-returners bound for higher, there are those who are bound, and there are two types, bound with the form realm and bound from the formless realm in general. So but they can be classified in terms of their cause and in terms of the result. So in terms of the cause, there are those who train in insight and those who train in shamatha, in tranquility. So if you train in insight, then you'll be reborn in form, which is conducive to vipassana meditation. If you train in shamatha, then you'd be reborn in the formless realms. If they alternate the defiled and undefiled jhanas and meditate mixing them, that means you go back and forth between defiled and undefiled and undefiled. You're going back and forth very quickly. Those who train in insight are ultimately bound to go as far as below none. That is the highest abode, the highest of the pure abodes of the form realm in terms of result. And then there are also threefold. There are leapers, half leapers, and those who die in all the realms. So a leaper, someone who alternates the jhanas as a human, but regresses through the afflictions of the first jhana. So you develop the ability to alternate between them as you're human. You meditate really well, and you're able to do the great the alternation, but you kind of slips. So when you die, you are reborn in the first abode of jhana, which is the Brahma's abode. Of the 3 abodes of the first jhana, there's Brahma's abode, Brahma's ministers, and great Brahma. They're born in Brahma's abode. Then they meditate on the great alternation, which is going back and forth 5 times. And so because of the power of that, they're able to be reborn in the level of below none, and there they make nirvana manifest. In other words, they achieve nirvana. A half leaper is pretty much the same, except they are unable to produce the great alternation in Brahma's abode. So they only do either the lesser or the medium. Like they can only do it one time back and forth, or maybe 2 or 3 times back and forth. And because of that, they're reborn in not great, which is the lowest of the pure abodes, or without pain, which is the second of the pure abodes, where they then meditate on the great alternation, and then they're reborn in below none and make nirvana manifest. So in other words, they're on the lowest level of great abode. They start doing the alternating meditation. They achieve the level of the 4th jhana, and they can do the alternating meditation. They can do it 2 or 3 times because of being able to do it 2 or 3 times, they're either reborn, then they're going to be reborn in the 4th jhana, but not on the impure levels, but on the pure levels, and the lowest of those is either not great or without pain. Then after that, when they get to those levels, there's a really good levels, to be on. So they jump from that level up to below none. And then when they're in below none, they achieve arhatship. Then you've got one who dies in all the realms, is born in all the 16 abodes of the form realm, with the exception of great Brahma, in succession, and then makes nirvana manifest. So what do? They're born in Brahma's abode. And then their meditation, they can't alternate. They don't even achieve the 2nd jhana, but they get a little bit better at the 1st jhana, so then they're born in Brahma's ministers. And they're meditating there, and then they achieve the 2nd jhana. But they aren't reborn in Brahma's abode, in great Brahma, because if you're born in great Brahma, then you have to think that Brahma is a creator god, basically. There's a certain view you have to have. They don't have that view, so they're not born in great Brahma, because great Brahma is what? He thinks he's the creator of the world. So they're not reborn there. Then they're reborn in the 1st abode of the 2nd jhana, and then the 2nd abode, and the 3rd abode, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all the way up to the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, to the 3rd abode of the 4th jhana, and then they finally can alternate a little bit, and they go to not great, and then without pain, and so forth, until they get to the highest level of the form realm and achieve nirvana. So they go one after another. So that's 16 lifetimes. Okay? Then you've got those who will go to the peak of existence. So we've had those bound for form, those who will go to below none. They're headed all the way up to below none, and then they achieve arhatship there. Or they're going to go to the peak of existence. That means they're going to go via the formless realms. So this is, and others go to the peak. So those other than the ones who alternate the dhyanas and go to below none are those who enjoy tranquility, that is shamatha meditation, and neither meditate on alternation nor go to below none. So they don't do the dhyana alternating meditation. They just don't want to bother. They just want to rest in the shamatha. And they go from the 1st dhyana through all the levels, with the exception of the 4th dhyana's pure abodes. So they go through the 2 abodes of the 1st dhyana, the 3 of the 2nd, 3 of the 4th, 3rd, 3 of the 4th. Then they skip from there to the formless realm and all the way up until they get to the peak of existence. So that's one way. That's kind of going through it in order. Or they can be similar to leapers and so forth. In other words, they could go from like the 1st jhana and then leap to the peak of existence. Or they could go a half leaper and go from the 1st jhana to maybe the 1st of the formless realms and then to the peak. They do go to the formless realms later, but since they first go to the jhanas, they're called bound for form. So they're still bound for form. Now, can they pass? So you're on these long paths, like you're one who's going to be rebound everywhere, be reborn everywhere, or you're going to go to the peak of existence. Can they pass into nirvana in the meantime, you ask? It is possible. So here, below none and the peak of existence are taken as the upper limit, but there can be attainment of nirvana without going to them, similar to the 7 timers, it is explained. So you might be on this path, like you're one who's going to die in all the realms. And then you think, oh man, this path has taken a long time. I don't want to do this. I want to achieve liberation now. And so then you work hard at it and you achieve nirvana in some lower level of form. That's fine. That's possible. So there are noble beings who prefer samadhi and tranquility, or shamatha meditation. And so the former who are ultimately bound for below none prefer full knowing and train in insight. So if you prefer tranquility, then you're going to eventually end up in the formless realm. If you prefer insight meditation and training in prajna, then you are bound for the below none. So then there are those who are bound for formless. These are people who achieve the formless states in their human lifetime. 4 other types are bound for formless. Additionally, there are 4 other types, different from the previously explained non-returners, who have achieved, who have attained the mind of formless in desire and not regressed. And so these are the 4 types of bound for formless. So these are similar to the same types as in the form realm. Like in the form realm, we had 5 types, right? We had passing into nirvana in the bardo, passing into nirvana on birth, passing into nirvana with effort, passing into nirvana without effort, and bound for higher. So Here, if you're going to the formless realm, there is no bardo for the formless realm, so you can't have that. Remember, this is from the third chapter. We spoke about this in the third chapter, no bardo for the formless realm. But you can achieve nirvana pretty soon after birth, or you might have to work for it after birth and then achieve it, or you might be able to just achieve it later without working for it, or you might have to go through each of the levels of form in succession. And it's also suitable to give them the designations of leaper and so on. In other words, they can go through it in succession, or they can go from like the first formless to the peak of existence and so forth. So that is the sixth type of non-returner. Oh, excuse me. So then we have the explanation of visible peace. Another transcends sorrow here. So there are also non-returners who achieve arhatship or pass into nirvana here in the desire realm. So another non-returner, different from those bound from form and formless, transcends sorrow by attaining nirvana here in the desire realm itself in the very same lifetime as they attain non-returner. This is the seventh non-returner called visible peace. So that is the seventh type of non-returner. So thus the 5 bound for form can each be born in the 16 abodes with the exception of the great Brahma. They have 6 families, which are going to be described below. There are 6 different sort of capacities. 9 detachments. They could have either been freed. They have 9 sets of discards for each level, right? So they could have discarded, they could have not discarded any, or discarded 1 or 2 or so forth, up to 8. So from 0 to 8 is 9. And 3 faculties, sharp, medium, and dull. So by multiplying these, there are 12,960 bound for form. So if you talk about all the different permutations, so basically you are bound for form. There are 12,960 different possibilities for how you could end up getting to nirvana. 12,000 different, almost 13,000 different paths. So then those bound for formless have 4 supports, 6 families, 9 detachments, and 3 faculties, and which multiplied make 2,592 bound for formless. So there are fewer abodes in the formless realm, so there are a lot fewer there. Then visible support has 9 supports, 6 families, 72 detachments, and 3 faculties, which when multiplied make 11,664 who are visible peace. So these are just large numbers. The point here, the numbers are not so important. The point here is that there are lots of different ways. Any individual has a different path that they have to follow through because of their different capacities, because of their different inclinations, and whatever circumstances are around them. So this is saying that there is actually a lot of different ways that you can get from here to nirvana. You could do it like a Buddha or a Pratyeka Buddha by sitting down and going through the 3 noble, through the path of seeing and meditation all in one night. You could go through it in one lifetime, or in the rest of one lifetime. You could go through it in up to like 20 different lifetimes. There are different levels, different ways that it can happen. And when you put that all together and all the different permutations, you can have thousands of different possibilities. That's the point. So every path is individual. So that is that. And so now we've come to the section on explaining the many different types of non-returners. Okay, so we're going to go through this is 4 topics: the classifying those bound for form as 9, explaining the holy wanderers, or those going to pure destinations, explaining nobles whose lives have been completely transformed, and methods for meditating on the alternation of jhanas. So those classifying those bound for form as 9. So when we talk about those who are bound for form, remember we have those bound for form and those bound for formless. When you talk about those bound for form, there are 9 different types of them. So there are 2 points here. It's these actual dividing the 3 into 3 more. 9 bound for form can be explained. So when you dividing the 3 non-returners to achieve nirvana, so you've got 3 different types of non-returners bound for form. You've got those who achieve nirvana in the between state, those bound and those bound for higher into 3 more each. You've got 9 bound for form. The way they're classified as 9 is that in the first category has those who attain nirvana quickly, not quickly, and after a long time. In other words, you achieve the formless in this meditation, you die, and you achieve nirvana in the bardo, either really quickly, or after a little while, or after some time. It's not going to be that long. Long time doesn't mean eons. Long time means after some time. So it's like a pretty quick, medium, and long. So that's 3 different types. The second category has the middle 3 types, nirvana immediately after birth, with effort and without effort. So those, when we talked about nirvana as the 5, we have the first category, nirvana, or excuse me, those bound for form as 5. We talked about nirvana in the bardo, which has 3 types. Then you've got the nirvana on birth, with effort and without effort. Those 3 are all combined in a second category, which has 3 types. So that's 6. And then the third category has the leapers, half leapers, and those who die in all realms. So those are those bound for hire, and we talked about those 3 categories. And that way you'd say that there are 9. But another way to say it, it is explained that it's possible to classify all 3 as those who attain nirvana quickly, not quickly, and after a long time. What this is saying that, say, well, let's forget about all those names. If you are going to be, point is, you have achieved, you've gone through the path of seeing, you have achieved the dhyana meditations, you are free of attachment to the desire realm. You're gonna, so you're gonna be reborn, and you have the karma, so you aren't going to be reborn in the desire realm. You're headed for the form realm. So there are 3 different ways basically that this can happen. Either you can die and achieve nirvana in the between state, in the bardo. That's one way. Or you can achieve it in the first lifetime you have in the form realm, or you can achieve it after a bunch of lifetimes in the form realm. And either of those, you can divide it as either you're going to get it quickly, after a little while, or after a long time. So that makes 9 different types. And the way we distinguish these is by saying they are distinguished by their different karma, afflictions, and faculties. So you have different karma. So you have different types of afflictions and different types of different levels of afflictions and different faculties. So the 9 are distinguished by their different karma, by their afflictions and their faculties. So individually, they're classified through their karma that produces manifest results. In other words, this is when we talked about the different types of full ripening of karma, some produces a manifest result that is experienced in this lifetime or before rebirth, that is experienced on rebirth, and that is experienced in other lifetimes. These are different types of karma we discussed last year in the Foundations for Abhidharma II course. And then we have the Dharma, then we have those that are, then they also have distinguishes of the afflictions. They have the lesser, medium, and greater afflictions that are harder or easier to discard. And they also have the different faculties, sharp, medium, or dull. Okay, so this is enough for today. And when you look at this the first time, of course, you've got all these numbers, especially that passage where you have 13,000 different types of non-returners bound for form and 12,000 or 2,640 bound for, and it's just like, it seems like so much. Don't worry about it. The main point here is that there are just like different types of individual paths for different people. If you are planning on going on and studying the ornament of clear realization, then you should go back and review this passage. And actually, it's not that difficult. It's just numbers, different types and permutations. When I was in Shedra, and I know you're thinking, he's saying this is not difficult. It's like, I'm totally confused. What is this? So, when I was in Shedra, and when we were studying the ornament of clear realization, we were going, have I told this story before? I probably have. We were going through the ornament of clear realization, and the Kempo was going through very quickly, even more quickly, much less detail than I went through today. He was basically reading and saying, oh, like this, there's a couple points here and there. He got to this sentence, and I'd read the material beforehand, and this sentence, I was like, what does this mean? And he went through the sentence, he read the sentence, and he said, this is easy. And then he moved right on. It's like, wait a minute, that's not easy. I don't understand it. Maybe it's easy for you, but I haven't seen it before. So I was kind of like, I was annoyed. And then I went back to my room, and that afternoon I was studying, and I read it and I read it, and it's like, yeah, that's the point. It is easy. So the reason why it seems difficult now is unfamiliarity. There are new terms, new words, new permutations, but if you think about what the terms mean and come to understand that, it's actually not so hard as you think in the Abhidharma until you start going through the 20 different types of Sangha and the ornament of clear realization, especially if you're going through them in a Galuk training system where they really go through it very finely. Then there's a lot to debate. If you want to go into fine detail, it gets very, very tricky. Like, well, how do you determine which is which? What are the characteristics of each of these different types? Then it gets tricky. But on a basic level, it's actually kind of simple. The basics are simple. If you have those in mind, that's what we're going through on this level. And for, again, as I said at the beginning, this is not a path that we generally practice ourselves. So here, this is just kind of an introduction for you. So, and I think that I have a couple of questions. I'll take the easier one first. And the meaning of the level of below none is akanishta, the level of akanishta. Often we use the Sanskrit term akanishta as opposed to the English term below none. When I was translating this text, I was in my we have to use all English words phase, and I've kind of moved out of that phase now. Sometimes the English words are not as understandable as we hope they might be. Then the second question is, in regards to non-returners or non-returners, how would you qualify the rebirth of tulkus? Okay, such as the Trangu, the incarnations of the Trangu Rinpoche and the journey or level of accomplishment and intention, please comment. So these are actually a bit different. So, and the reason why they're different is this. Non-returners are still taking rebirth by the power of karma. They have not roused the intention of bodhicitta. When they take rebirth, they're still taking power by the rebirth by the power of karma and the afflictions. The karma, what is the karma? The karma is the dhyana meditation. What are the afflictions? It's the attachments to each of the particular realms. It's not big afflictions like anger and so forth we have in the desire realm. They're subtle afflictions, but they are afflictions. And so they're still taking rebirth in samsara because of karmic and afflictions until they achieve arhatship, which would be the cessation of all of those karma and afflictions. So that's different. On the bodhisattva level, with tulkus, you have the motivation of bodhicitta, and when you achieve the first bodhisattva level and you see the meaning of emptiness on the bodhisattva path with a great vehicle, then you no longer, because the realization of emptiness is greater than the realization of the Four Noble Truths in the foundation vehicle path, the realization of emptiness, at that point, once you've realized that, you no longer have to take rebirth because of karma and afflictions. However, the bodhisattvas on the impure levels continue to take rebirth out of the, what do we say? It's the imprints of attachment, the imprints of desire. Not actual manifest attachment to a level, but because of the imprints of that, which is compassion. Another way of saying compassion. In other words, a bodhisattva still has a level of attachment. Bodhisattva on the first 7 levels still has a level of attachment to the beings of samsara because they feel compassion for them. They want to come back and help them. So on the first 7 impure levels, the bodhisattva takes rebirth through that attachment. Later on the pure levels, it's different. They don't have that attachment, those imprints of attachment so much anymore, but they continue to take rebirth out of aspirations and so forth for the sake of sentient beings. So when you have, in the Tibetan system, you have a tulku who takes rebirth, then it's different than the non-returners. And even with tulkus, you have different types. And Trangu Rinpoche himself says this. You have those who intentionally take rebirth, such as the Dalai Lama or the Gyalwang Karmapa. The Gyalwang Karmapa leaves a prediction letter, and then they find that tulku because of the prediction ladder, and so forth. Now, there are different ways it happens. They're intentionally taking rebirth. Then there are those who really are the tulku, and they might not be completely intentional, but they are still taking rebirth. And then you've got tulkus who are just kind of the great beings identify this child has got potential. Let's call them a tulku. Call them a tulku, and that kid, boy or girl, becomes a tulku. They're given the education, and then they come into that role. And if it all goes well, then they develop and become great masters. So those different types of tulkus, according to Trungpa Rinpoche. Rinpoche always says that he's the last type, but sometimes we think it probably is maybe not the last. Depends on how pure our perception is. And similar with all the other masters. So those are the questions from our Zoom audience. And those of you watching on YouTube may have questions as well. And so you can email them in. And one point, people have been asking about the Tibetan root text, and until yesterday morning, I intended to do it yesterday, but something came up. So I was unable to get to it yesterday, and I'm going to be unable to do it in a timely fashion in the same way as I did it last year. So what I will be doing this afternoon, one of the things I'll do this afternoon is prepare a kind of quick and easy version of the Tibetan root text with just the Tibetan root text. I'm sorry I'm unable to produce the entire kind of bilingual version the way I did last year. So my apologies about that. I kind of forgotten about what I should prepare before this class started a few weeks ago. So that is my fault and my apologies. So now let us please dedicate the merit of listening to and teaching the Dharma to the benefit of all sentient beings, so that it frees them from all suffering, so that they may achieve, so that they may so that they may meet spiritual masters spiritual friends who can guide them along the path to swiftly achieve Buddhahood. O sanam de tam je se bani tomne nye bedranam pam chete ke gana chi balong chubai si pe tsole ro kunyun ro sho. By this merit may we attain omniscience, defeat the enemy, wrongdoing, and free all beings swiftly from the ocean of existence, churned by great waves of birth, age, sickness, and death. Chanchu semcho rimboche make panam gejureje jeba nyamba me baryang gongde gongdu pelwar sho. Okay, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you.